Look at this map here where they're trying to determine, because the Republican Party is now the white party and the Democratic Party is now the non-white party. Where is it that the trend of white voters moving to the Republicans, where is that going to help the Republicans? And they've pulled this out, like in Minnesota and Wisconsin, and the top up near Maine there. They might actually be right about Maine, but I don't. I think that's more of a rural-urban split. The day Minnesota votes for the Republicans, guys. See, I've been clear that I think the premise is flawed, and we'll see it come out on election day. Trump will win uneducated whites, but by a smaller margin than Romney. This whole idea is all based around this weird weighting. It's all manipulated data. It's not real, guys. There was a post a couple of days ago about racists going back to the Democratic Party once Obama is gone. Maybe that's a prerequisite to this. The swing back to the Democrats is just simply the presence of an option that didn't previously exist. With uneducated whites, it may not be a large swing back, but you'll see it. In fact, I think you'll be hard-pressed to find any demographic where Trump outperforms Romney. I want to be clear about that, okay? People are looking, where's the upside for Trump? There is no upside for Trump. I don't think anybody is going to look at Trump and see he was better than Romney. Nobody. Not any grouping. Even the uneducated whites are not that stupid. I'm sorry. Or at least not on average. Okay. Ironically, I do think it's reasonable to accept him to do a little bit better with blacks due to lower turnout. And of all the demographics, which is the one that Trump may do better than Romney on? Is blacks. I mean, not by a lot, mind you, but it's not because Trump is more appealing to blacks than Romney. It's because Obama won something like 90% of black votes. Sorry, did I say 90? I meant to say 98. I'm not going to look it up. You look it up. But it's actually true. Romney got like 2% of the black vote. So now, and why do you think that is? Do you think it's because Obama's policies are that much better for blacks? Obviously, the reason why Obama won something like 97 or 98% of blacks is because he's black. Or at least people think he's black. I'm not sure he even thinks he's black, to be honest with you. But he's got a few drops anyways. And there's no way around it. That's going to come down. Maybe it'll come down to 95%. I think maybe 90% is, if Clinton can get more than 90% of black voters, that's pretty impressive, considering that she's not black. Or at least, as far as we can tell, she's not black. She seems to be. Her campaign seems to want to present her that way. There's not even a drop in there, I don't think. It's not dependent on policy. It's not dependent on candidates. It's just there's no way out, okay? It's going to come down. It's just gravity. And it may in the end be the only thing that goes up. Or at least, behind any, statistically measurable way. So all of these models, everything is based on this idea that white people are trending, right? White people are trending that way, so the Republicans went out and they took this racist douchebag and they put him out there to take advantage of the fact that white people were trending that way. I've pointed this error out repeatedly over the course of this election cycle. You take a little piece of the graph and you do a regression analysis and then you project it into infinity. And I can't get my head around why it is that people... Like you might expect, a student to make that error a couple of times, and then, they get hit with a ruler and they don't do it again kind of thing. Or you might expect, it's the kind of thing that dies in peer review, right? Like people get locked in patterns, they get trapped in something, they think they found something, but their colleagues are supposed to wrap them up and say, no, what are you doing? You can't project this into infinity. And you need to look at factors that are local. And there's a pretty big local factor, which is that the president was black for 8 years. So this idea that they're taking this existing trend that's happening due to lack of education or whatever else, as though the Republicans are the party that appeals more to poor people. All that free market healthcare that's great for poor people, right? All that lack of government spending that's great for poor people. Like, what the fuck? And it happens to be that it's happening, with the black president. So if you take somebody in there that gets out ahead of them and, leads from behind, I talked about that a little bit before too, gets out in front of them, then that's going to get them to where they're going. It's flawed thinking, right? I don't see any reason to think that Trump is going to outperform Romney with whites. But like I say, all of the models are pushing it that way. And then, people are trying to figure it out, right? So they're talking about, okay, well, it's uneducated white males. He's up 2.7% with it's not statistically meaningful. I don't think he's going to do that much worse with uneducated white males. He may actually hold uneducated white males, but he's not going to do better with them. Why would he? Even uneducated white men can look at these two candidates and figure out, okay, one of them's a rich asshole, but he's not that bad. Or he is pretty bad, but he's, the other one's a fucking dipshit, right? Like, I don't, what upside is there for Trump over Romney? If you can articulate that argument for me, I'd love to hear it, because I don't see it. And rather, I think that what you're going to see is that once you take away the cause of all the racism, you won't see the racism fall apart, but you'll see the voting patterns break up. And these are complementary processes. If I tell you that Obama won 98% of blacks because he was black, and that's going to have to come down, you're probably going to agree with me immediately, no argument. But if I tell you that Romney won 98% of racists, and that's going to come down because because the incumbent's not black anymore, you're going to step back on that, and you're going to say, well, all your models were making the assumption that you shouldn't have made that I'm trying to dismantle. It is a complementary process. Trump cannot do worse with blacks due to the identity voters, and Clinton cannot do worse with whites due to the racist voters. And you're seeing it, women, educated men, educated women, and specifically women of all educated levels, they're all down substantially. Again, maybe in the end, uneducated white men, he might hold them. But you're not going to see that come up statistically. And the idea that you are is you're just projecting the fantasy that the Republican Party wanted you to project. It was based on flawed thinking, and it's going to come down in the end. And I think to reverse either of these trends would require something really consequential that's not in front of us. Okay, so beyond the obvious fact that he's almost certainly going to do better with black voters, I would expect that Trump underperforms Romney across the board, across race, across class, across gender. Also, if we do expect the racial polarization to balance out as a consequence of the race card being removed, we should expect the gender polarization to increase as a consequence of the gender card being introduced, which we are seeing massively. The same logic that says that once you take the black guy out, the racial polarization comes down tells you that once you put the woman in, then the gender polarization increases. I think most people would have the foresight to realize, even if they see how clear that is, they're not going to put these linear regression models down and say that, okay, they're not going to do what they're doing with race. they're going to be able to see, okay, we can't just take this data here and cherry pick it and then project it for the next 100 years about gender. And they'll realize that right away. They just won't do that. So why do they get so stuck in race? I'll tell you why. Because we're all racists. And because the whole basis of a lot of these modelings is racist. Again, I've been railing against the racist models since February or something. It's a social bias and it's based in the polling data. The polling models are inherently racist because it's a reflection of the society. And so I asked this sarcastically. Are we going to see this in 2020 or 2024? These models talking about which counties have more women in them and how Democrats are poised to make gains in female-dominated counties for the next 100 years until they have all the female vote everywhere. I don't think that regression is really ever going to be predictive unless you're talking about something physical. You need that linear equation. A regression model when you're studying elections is only useful after the fact. You can't use regression to predict anything in an election because the conditions aren't stable. We don't have laboratory conditions. Things are constantly changing. There's variables coming in and out. If we want to use a crude physical analysis, it may be the case that your force is going to be determined by your acceleration, but there's forces coming every which way in completely unpredictable ways. If you can't predict the force field, for lack of a better term, then you can't build the analysis. And again, I'm seeing this over and over and over again. And it's not a question of bad math, it's a question of people just not being reasonable. It's like it's like you've got all these mathematicians that are locked in rooms by themselves and they're all tripping out in these fantasies and nobody's peer reviewing each other. Maybe that's what I'm doing. Maybe I'm doing a peer review. Maybe that's my point.